Mr. Chairman, let me get back to your original question of kind of the why we're doing this, okay? And the why we're doing this is kind of like the councilwoman alluded to, but I'm gonna go a little more granular, okay? The process is we have a zoning ordinance, so every inch of dirt in Greenwood County is zoned. It's zoned something, residential, ag, commercial, something. Every inch is something. The biggest group is zoned Rural Development District, RDD, okay? That's 26% of all land in Greenwood County is RDD, okay? The issue with RDD is not an exclusive zone. And by that I mean, if you're in a residential zone, all you can do is residential, okay? If you're in ag, commercial, industrial, as the name implies. Rural development is the opposite. You can do anything in rural development district unless it is excluded, okay? So since our zoning ordinance is silent on data centers, they're not allowed in any of the ones that you have to have permission to do, but they are allowed in RDD because they're not excluded, okay? So that's the why we're doing this, is because we have a huge loophole in our zoning ordinance. And the reason why we have the hole is because when the zoning ordinance was written 20, 30 years ago, data centers weren't a thing. No one knew to put them in there. So they're not excluded, which means they're allowed. So if we have 26% of our property in this whole county allows data centers, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So we need to make sure, not that we are excluding data centers, we need to make sure that we're prepared so that if a data center comes forward and we need to try to find them somewhere, they don't have 26% of our land to choose from. They get to go where we need them to go, where they fit, where there's a good fit. So the way you do that is you put restrictions in place. You say you have to do sound readings, and you can only be at so many decibels, and you have to have certain provisions for water and for electricity. And that's what we're doing with this text amendment. This text amendment is not allowing data centers. This text amendment is restricting data centers and putting structure in place so that they can't come in a manner that has no guidance and no regulation. So that's the why, and that's what it is. The whole discussion we're having now is not whether we're actively recruiting a data center or where their data center is going to go. What we're doing now is trying to put some guardrails in place so that we can have a data centers if one was to come to fruition, but we can have one with regulations and rules.
Will you be able to, with your ordinance, not only put in parameters for how they come in,
Sure.
but what they can do after they get in terms of expansion? And I'm thinking, what happened in Spartanburg. They came in one size, and everybody's like, okay, that's fine.
Sure.
That's our convenience again. And then all of a sudden, you're like, well, wait a minute, you've got this massive expansion plan.
Right.
Massive expansion plan.
Right.
Do you have any opportunity now to say, well, no, you can't do that? Or is it, well, once you've opened the door and let them in, we have to allow their businesses to grow and do whatever?
I think the answer to that is like most things. It's a little yes and no. No in the sense of we're not going to say you can only build, as the text amendment is written now, it does not say you can only build this big of a facility. It does say that you have to have certain parameters. For example, setbacks. Your building can only be so far from your property line. So there is going to be a natural restriction on expansion based upon the topography and geography of each facility. So yes, there is some restrictions, but no, not specifically on size.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've just in that time frame, first, thank you all for being here.
Sure, glad to.
I think I've collected a lot of questions just from our conversation, so I'm going to try to roll them off.
Great.
One thing I think is important, and I want to commend you all on, regardless if we have a clear understanding or not, and that's being proactive and not reactive.
Thank you.
When it comes down to these type large movements, structure on the front end will prepare us better on the back end. So thank you for that.
We agree.
So now here are the questions.
Sure.
When the statement was made that they're able to come in now and there's nothing to stop them,
Yes.
but as a business, there still has to be approval to enter, or no?
No, not in the county. There are no business licenses that are required. So like there are in the city. The city of Greenwood has a business license.
Correct.
So they have the ability to say, we don't want your business here. We're not going to issue you a license. The county doesn't have that. So, assuming you can meet the zoning requirements, which again I've just covered, are essentially none, then yes, they could come in. They could come in today for them. Yes, the short answer is yes to your question.
That's why I asked that question that way.
Yes.
We're different from city versus county.
Mm-hmm.
City has something, county doesn't. So
Correct.
thanks for being proactive
Sure.
there. The next one is, I know we mentioned that Self Regional said they use 2 data centers,
Mm-hmm.
and wherever they are we able to say that if the data centers are put into our county, that our information will be stored into that data center? Is part A of that question. And
No.
exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just because there's a data center doesn't mean it's storing our information. It's storing whoever information that as it's collected.
Right. Yes.
Okay, great. So my next question would be, so what is the true benefit for Greenwood County allowing data centers to come in?
Sure. I think there's a few.
Okay.
There's going to be some jobs, obviously depending upon the size, but it's not going to be 1,000 jobs. It's probably going to be closer to 100. But there are
Correct.
going to be 100 very well-paying jobs. I mean, we're talking high-level jobs.
Which requires a certain skill set.
Sure, and it's going to, you're probably easily talking 6-figure jobs. So you're going to need Piedmont Tech, which we've already engaged Dr. Hope Rivers to start working with. How do we prepare our citizens to take those 100 jobs? So that's going to be one of the huge benefits. Is I think it sets us up, and I don't think it does. If you look at the history of Piedmont Tech 10, 15 years ago, we're talking about megatronics, and essentially no one was talking about megatronics. Now, if you go to Lonza and some of our factories, that's how they run their whole factories, through megatronics. So we have a history of working with Piedmont Tech to have them a generation ahead of a lot of other tech schools, because we're bringing workforce, we're bringing the businesses to the technology and saying, okay, here's what we need. So I think you're going to see us have an opportunity to be more advanced as far as workforce development. I think that's one. I think two, they're going to pay, and let's just be honest, we're all adults here, they're going to pay a lot of taxes. I mean, a lot. I mean, you're talking about a large scale data center. We talked about different sizes. I think there's about $1 billion, I think, dollars for the one in Aiken, and I think the one in Berkeley is about $9 billion. Okay, so James used the example of $5 billion in his presentation on Tuesday night to County Council, just kind of as an average, just kind of give a as if it was a $5 billion data center. Here's the numbers. So in the first year, a $5 billion data center is going to pay about $66 million in taxes.
Okay.
So that's a lot of tax revenue. Your schools are going to get about 60% of that. So you're talking about $36 to $40 million going to schools. So there's a huge impact.
That's the why.
That's a part of the why.
That's a part of the why.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because
Sure.
I know other people have questions, so this might be a combined question.
Sure.
One of my biggest issues is the placement of this said entity, if it does come.
Certainly.
Like, what will be the environmental constraints that are placed on this particular entity? And what will be the proximity to neighborhoods? Because most times, when it appears that when there are organizations or businesses that come that have a negative impact on the environment, they go into the lowest, the poorest communities.
Sure.
Those are the ones that we can do that.
Yeah, we
So
understand.
where
Sure.
would you envision a facility with the ability to do what it can do
Sure.
to be positioned in Greenwood County?
Sure.
And what size?
Can I
Square
answer
footage,
can I
yes.
answer the first one first? 'Cause I'm not smart to keep two answers
go.
in my head. Let me do one at a time.
Okay.
So the first one would be, and James can maybe speak to this better than I can. I don't believe you can put the kind of size that we're talking about anything less than 35, 40 acres. Okay. So,
Oh, okay.
So you got to be thinking, and that I would say that's probably about right. That's about as small.
35.
That's about as small as you can do one.
Oh, wow.
And if you're talking, like the example we use of a $5 billion data center, you're probably talking closer to 100 or more acres. So
Okay.
this is not going to be, it's not going to be squeezed in, to attract adjacent to, a residential area. It may be a house here or there, but if you're talking in 30 to 100 acre tracts, you're talking about large areas.
In your ordinance, are you able to say a minimum size? Meaning, could you sit there and say it's got to be a $5 billion one or larger so that you know it's got to be a 100-acre thing, which would then control where it can go?
I think you could. But it doesn't. It doesn't right now. But back to the lady's question. Let me ask a couple other things. One of the things that I guess the restrictions, and maybe that's the word you use, restrictions, whatever word you use, restrictions. One of them is setbacks. So from a residence, it has to be 200 feet. The closest corner of the building has to be 200 feet from adjacent property line to a residence, and 100 feet of that has to be wooded. And we've outlined what wooded means. We tell them how many trees you have to have, what kind of trees they have to be. So all of that is designed to eat up that sound. So the requirement is at the property line, the noise cannot be more than 60 decibels. Now, what is 60 decibels? Because most of us don't walk around with what 60 decibels is. 60 decibels is equivalent to two people having a normal conversation 3 feet apart. So if you think about whatever that volume is of two average normal people having a conversation 3 feet apart, that's about 60 decibels. So at the property line, which is 200 feet from a residence, they can't be louder than a normal two-person conversation. Now, in terms of light, because we know that's another concern, they can't be more than, I believe it's 0.1, I think it's 0.1 candle foot. Who knows what a candle foot is? A candle foot is a literal candle, how much light it emits in 1 square foot. They have to be 1/10 of that at the property line. So those are the kind of restrictions we're talking about that we have in place.